Wherever you're joining us from, wherever you're joining us from, we truly appreciate your time, and we're grateful to have you tuned into BNY Mellon's event as we dive into an engaging discussion on how to navigate and advance your career. So firstly, a brief introduction from myself. So my name is Boyega Ojo, and I will be a moderator today. I joined Newton in 2019 as an investment risk analyst, and I've been in the investment space since 2010. So for those of you who don't know, Newton is one of the boutiques here at BNY Mellon. And on a day-to-day basis, my role involves assisting the portfolio managers in understanding the inherent risks that they have within their funds. And from an oversight perspective, I assist them in meeting our clients' risk and return objectives. BNY Mellon is a global investments company dedicated to helping our clients manage and service their financial assets throughout the investment lifecycle. Businesses, communities, and global economies rely on us because we prioritize client experience, collaboration, innovation, and resilience. Our enduring ambition is to build the best global team, one that is inclusive of differing perspectives, backgrounds, experiences, and represents the increasingly varied markets and clients we serve. We're so very grateful to have the opportunity to partner with BYP to host this webinar event. Today, we've brought together 4 BNY Mellon leaders from the US and the UK to talk about their career journeys and provide meaningful advice to those looking to start or continue a career in financial services. We'll also hear about our panelists' involvement in our EBRGs, employee business resource groups, and other internal organizations that allow us to strengthen our culture at BNY Mellon and promote a sense of belonging and support the well-being of our employees. That said, I'd now like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. Please share your name, your role and tenure at BNY Mellon, and your location as well. Yinka, are you happy to start us off, please?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Perfectly, thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. I am Yinka Madden. I am currently a business resiliency leader with our treasury services business. I've been with BNY Mellon for 13 years and I am based in New York City.
Great. Nicole, how about you?
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Clark. I'm Chief Compliance Officer for Pershing EMEA. I joined Pershing in January 2018 and I have several years experience as a compliance officer. I'm based in London.
Fantastic. Shakira, over to you.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Shakira Sebastian. I've been with BNY Mellon now for almost 16 years. I'm currently the Chief Financial Officer for our corporate staff functions, and I am based in New York.
Thank you. And last but not least, Joe.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much to BYP for inviting us along today. It's just, always a joy to be part of these events. My name is Joanna Symes. I'm an HR director at BNY Mellon. I support the Global Markets and Infrastructure Group, currently based in London.
Fantastic. Thank you all. So to kick us off and help us get to know you, each of you hold various leadership positions at BNY Mellon, whether it be within your business line or other internal organizations such as our EBRGs or the Black Leadership Forums. When you began your career many years ago, did you always aspire to have leadership role in this industry? And what were the key moments in your path that got you here? Joe, would you go ahead and start us off, please?
So the short answer is no.
Okay.
I didn't aspire to be a leader when I first started out. I think, casting my mind back, I just wanted to be the best I could be, in my current job at that time. And then it's once I got my feet under the table, got accustomed to working within financial services, I started to give more thought around, the what's next for me, and then started targeting leadership roles. So I've never kind of like aspired to be a leader. I just always wanted to be good at my job. But I think as I learned around the culture and, what a career is, that's when I started to pay more attention to it. And I think the pivotal moment for me is when I found my voice, and I just felt comfortable in saying to people, well, what's next for me and what advice can you give me? So really being curious and asking those questions to help propel my career.
Definitely, I totally agree. Finding your voice is very important, actually, in terms of progression as well. Nicole, would you like to add anything there?
Similar to Joe, I had no real vision of being a leader at the beginning of my career. I think the pivotal moment for me was being in compliance as well. There were a couple of key regulatory issues a firm that I worked with was dealing with, and I had worked at the regulator before, so I was able to navigate those regulatory issues and get them resolved relatively quickly within the firm with the regulator. And that then gave me a bit of kudos in the organisation that I worked for, which then allowed me to show my knowledge and how to deal with the regulators. And I think that's really helped to pivot my career.
Fantastic. I think definitely being good at your job and excelling in that role initially definitely helps as well.
Yeah.
Yinka, would you like to add anything there, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to the others, when I started out as an individual contributor, like most people, honestly, I was just focused on doing the best job I could, showing up every day and doing the best job I could. What happened was I was actually tapped on the shoulder. Sometimes that happens. And, you have that reaction. You're like, who, me? Wait a second, And it was a team that had been created, and my manager and mentors in the organization said, we think you would be great in this role. And, in discussion, what I came to realize was that they had seen something in me that I hadn't seen in myself, And as we talked about it and I leaned into the possibility and got really excited about meeting my team and thinking about, you think about the role of a leader, all the great things you can do together. It became something that I was very much excited about, and that worked really well. I went on to get involved with leadership development programs and really understanding what it takes to be a great leader and some of those attributes we all aspire to. I give that example because I think that for me was the pivotal moment. And for a lot of people in our careers, it's that point when you shift from delivering results through your own manpower and your own education and your own skill to really inspiring and engaging others to do that. You have an opportunity to provide an exponential contribution to the organization because you're really pushing it out, how you engage with your team and how people in your team engage with others. So leadership is something that I think you can hear it, I'm passionate about. I think we all have an opportunity to lead from wherever we are in the organization. And it's something I would encourage everyone listening to really keep in mind.
Great, thank you for that. You mentioned someone tap you on your shoulder. I think having those sponsors and mentors, noticing you always definitely helps. We'll get into that later. Shakira, would you like to add anything there?
Sure. I'd say sort of, right? So when I began my career, I was very focused on succeeding. Like everyone else, I wanted to do well in whatever I was going to do. And I was also very focused on becoming financially independent, right? So in order to do the latter, I knew I would have to take ownership and be very proactive with finding the right opportunities for myself. I started in an entry-level financial management development rotational program. And I recall early on being told that we needed to be like a sponge and always ask a lot of questions and, to develop and leverage your networks to help identify the next opportunity. And I would say that latter really helped me as far as, leveraging those networks. So when I was initially placed in my first post-program role, I was positively impacted by team turnover and other promotions, right? So there were so many other people moving around, and it provided me with an opportunity to step in. Like Yinka, you kind of get tapped, right? So I voiced my interest to continue to learn more. And at the same time, as I took the initiative to step in where I observed gaps and volunteer for special assignments, I also, was kind of tapped on the shoulder to say, I think you'd do well here. And my first reaction was, really? That person had been here for 7-8 years. I'm only, a few years out of school. Why do you think I can do it, type thing? And so when that opportunity, became officially available, I definitely kept my name in contention early on. And, I I was able to identify myself as someone who would be willing to do more, who was willing to, you know, kind of step up and kind of, you know, I say step out on faith, really. And then, you know, my first 5 to 7 years within the company that I was previously at were very formative. And every 18 months or so, I looked to see how I could either expand my current responsibilities or potentially take on new opportunities that would continue to add to my professional toolkit.
That's a great answer. I think you're definitely putting your hand up and leaning into those opportunities is definitely helpful. Yinka, I have a question for you. So as you were moving throughout your career, how did you know that you were ready to upskill yourself and take on new or higher level roles? And in what ways did you prepare and make yourself visible for those promotions and career changes?
Absolutely. So I started my career working in a consulting role, and one of the things that really appealed to me was the different experiences. You were always on different projects, and one of my career goals had always been to focus on getting a well-rounded base of knowledge, and always being curious. And I set that as the foundation in that you know, the visibility for career changes is really being open to the possibilities from my viewpoint. You know, what opportunities tie to your passions and interests, and how can you go after those opportunities? So I think, like Shakira had mentioned, you know, learning, listening, looking out for those types of things that I was really interested in. I mentioned leadership before, you know, organizational development, general management, you know, really leaning into those types of opportunities, ensuring that I had people that I could kind of reach out to and, you know, ask questions about, you know, potential roles. And then just being visible, making sure that people knew that I was interested in particular roles. I was interested in particular roles. Um, and really ensuring again that I had that interaction. So one of the opportunities I had, you know, literally was through at BNY Mellon. I know we'll talk about our employee resource groups. I happened to have run into someone who had hired me to the company, quite frankly, and we were at an employee event, and the conversation was, so what are you doing these days? Literally that question. And we said, oh my goodness, you know, listen, I'm interested. I love what I'm doing. I'm really good at my current job. Let's have lunch. And that was how that visibility and that being able to lean in and make people aware that you are interested in new opportunities, that led to someone who kept me in mind. And then when something opened up, they said, hey, listen, I think you should put your hat in the ring. And that was what led to new opportunities. So I'll again recap, you know, be good at your job, right? Be curious, ask questions, validate what you're understanding. Is this really a good opportunity for me? Make sure that you're really going after the right things, right? And then, you know, try to find those doors and those entryways that will allow you to make that transition seamlessly.
That's great. Yeah, definitely having a good network also helps, doesn't it? Having someone to bounce
Absolutely.
ideas off.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Joe, how have you prepared and made yourself visible for promotion opportunities and career changes?
It's a good question. So I approach this in terms of where you're at, I guess, within your career. I think if you're starting out, or you're kind of like a middle management layer, definitely know your job, you know, do it well and make an impact. If you're not making an impact, then, you know, you're not going to be considered for promotion, let's face it, and be honest at the end of the day. So in terms of kind of like preparing, again, it's being honest with yourself. I would, you know, take time out, sit down, define your career goals. So, you know, if you're somebody that knows that you aspire to be a CEO of a business, you know, in 5-10 years time, you know, work backwards and do some, you know, 12 months career steps. So how can I incrementally get myself to the next level, building up and obviously working your way up to CEO. And really important that you are honest with yourself around your strengths and, you know, what you like and what you don't like. You really do need to be passionate about what you do. so me, for example, it took me a while to realize, I don't really like people management. I don't want to manage a team. I want to be an individual, contributor and lead and work through others. And that took kind of like a tough, honest conversation with myself. So I'd say nail your job. Absolutely need to be knocking it out of the park from a performance perspective. As you kind of like progress in your career, your performance is kind of a given, and it's all about your image and your exposure. So it's no good just your manager knowing about you. You need to know who are the influencers, right? So who holds the power and who holds influence, and get to know those people and make sure that you get, visibility with them. And you can do that in a number of ways. So ERGs, for example, getting involved with an employee resource group, getting involved with, I don't know, ESG, culture groups, whatever kind of like extra groups there are out there, just putting your hand up for more and making a difference through other ways over and above your kind of like employed role. And think about your networks again. So when you're middle management and going upwards, again, that promotion to director, to managing director, really important that people know you outside your current business line. So build those networks, both internally, but also externally as well, right? And just make sure that people who are what I call around your personal boardroom. So recommend that you read a book by Dr. Zella King around personal boardrooms. There's all different role types. Just make sure that you've got a good mix of people around your table to guide and influence you. And then I would also say, people need to know that you want to be promoted as well, right? So again, it's that finding your voice and saying to your manager, what do I need to do in order to progress to the next level? And it sounds like a scary question, but it's, an easy one that you could raise when it comes to performance management. When you're in your review, it's kind of like a natural question. So what's next for me and what's missing in my toolkit to get me there? And then focus on those development pieces. But it takes courage. But I would, obviously encourage people just to take that time out, really, and be honest with yourself around what you are strong at, what you're not, and what you could develop, and have that direct conversation with your manager. Because if he or she or they don't know that you're interested for promotion, they might not put you forward, right? It's those that raise their hand, but also those who are visible and known to others around that decision-making table.
Absolutely.
I'd call those Joe's Gems, Boyega.
Joe's Gems. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I've taken note. That was a fantastic response. I like that. Image, exposure, putting your hand up. Yeah, definitely getting that book as well by Zella King. Fantastic. So, Shakira, I understand you are the co-chair of our Black Leadership Forum. Through this role, you invest time in leading, advocating for, and advancing others. Have you also found this role to be helpful in building your own leadership skills and promoting your own personal brand?
So first, let me just say, it is definitely an honor to be one of the co-chairs of the Black Leadership Forum. So for context, the Black Leadership Forum, also known as BLF, we established it back in 2013, and it's an extension of Impact, which is our multicultural employee business resource group. So BLF is represented by over 30 members or so of our firm's senior Black leaders with varying experiences and perspectives across multiple functions and business lines. Our main mission is to support Black employees as we work to create an environment where BNY Mellon is viewed as the preeminent employer of choice for Black employees. With that said, my role as co-chair, it's allowed me to really see firsthand how our Black leaders are not only committed to the firm's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, but it provides a front row seat to see the many things that our Black leaders are doing across the industry to drive innovative leadership, right? It's also allowed me to see how our leaders deal with challenging management issues. We not only spend time discussing, how we can aid the company in, delivering upon its goals, its diversity goals, but we coach and challenge each other as well. The bar has been set very high, and I'm continuously reminded how I have around 30 other examples of what impactful leadership looks like. So when I think of back to my own leadership skills and my own personal brand, I look, around, that virtual table, around the room, and say, look at the examples that I have to follow when I do have challenging issues that I'm confronted with, whether it be staffing, a challenge within, one of the functions that I support. I do have others that I can kind of reach out to. It's extended my network as far as, and it's also been having that view and having, people that you become close with that you can rely on. They also can offer, another perspective on my own development, right? So I'm regularly getting, coaching and feedback from some people that know me well, some people that don't, and they're getting to know me, but I always feel that it's coming from a place of honesty and sincerity. And, that's helped my leadership skills as well, because, we're all working together towards the same initiative. There's different ways of doing things, but, you will get that feedback and that guidance as well. As far as my own personal brand, it's definitely led me to do more things like this, right? More panels, more forums and discussions, where I was always comfortable working in the background, just doing my job, doing what I had to do, pushing the agenda forward. But, someone said, step out in front, right? So you can do it, so do it, and challenge yourself. It may not be comfortable the first time, the second time, the fifth time, but you'll get there. So as far as helping promote my brand, my being in finance, my leadership knows that I'm committed to DE&I, and I'm committed to leadership and developing. So that's helped me reaffirm with my peers and my senior leadership that I report into what my commitment is. So that's what I look at, really taking away from what BLF has aided me in doing.
Great.
Could I just add?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Boyega as well. Just listening to Shakira there. It's it's great that you are leading on the BLF, but it's also to recognise as well that careers aren't necessarily vertical. So you also need to understand and appreciate that sometimes you might need to make lateral career moves, so go like that in order to get to your end destination point. And I've made several kind of like lateral moves, and by lateral move it means same job level, same salary, but just different job, but obviously building up that experience, but then also working with people who I know could get me up to the next level. So just being conscious that it's not always a vertical and smooth path. Sometimes you have to go left, right, maybe a bit diagonal, but in order to reach that your end goal.
I totally agree. I mean, you have to, I tell that to my team all the time. You can't just look at what's the next step up, look at lateral, right? And what are the things that you can do outside of your current role? There's different ways to build different skill sets and to help you expand that skill set and step outside of your comfort zone. So I think actually you probably do better for yourself by going lateral a couple positions and seeing things from another perspective in another business area. Totally agree.
All adds to your toolkit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'll just add, I could not agree more. I'm not in vigorously, but I think you guys have set up perfectly well. Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree. That brings us nicely onto our next topic, which is basically the challenges you face as you promote or move on in your career. So this one is from Nicole. What is one of the biggest challenges you faced in your career, and how did you work to overcome that challenge?
I think one of the biggest challenges I had, and it was a lateral move actually to another organisation. I went in thinking, I was tapped on the shoulder for this role as well. And I went in thinking, I've got somebody who is my boss, who I know quite well, who will be able to help me pivot and understand the organisation. Well, within 3 months, he moved to Paris. So I was left in the new role with at that time, there was no leader. I was then approached and asked if I could cover the role. I said, yes, okay. It was the first time I had to sit in front of a very senior committee and present compliance results. The challenge I had was that the structure within the compliance function wasn't there. So I had a lot of individuals who were managers And I had a lot of individuals who weren't managers, and there were a lot of clashes. There was no MI, there was no answer, there was no real structure. I spent a whole year putting in a compliance framework, presented that to the committee, and it was torn to shreds. Fortunately for me, the guy who headed up operational risk, he could see where I was going with it, and he'd been with the organisation quite a long time. So he sat down with me, we went through the whole paper, we went through my whole plan in terms of what I wanted to implement. He helped me navigate the difficult individuals. I did a lot of offline conversations with the senior management team there. And eventually I took it back to the EXCO and they accepted the plan. I then had to take it to Paris to my French boss for him to accept. And I was in that organisation for 7 years, and he still didn't agree with the approach that I took in the whole 7 years that I was there. But at least I had the support locally from the senior management team. It was challenging. I had to pretty much sack most of the people that were working with me because there was no buy-in from them. As I said, there were a lot of managers and not enough real workers. I quickly did identify some key allies and some individuals who I could develop who would help me put the plan in place. I had a relatively young girl working for me. She understood Excel. She got my spreadsheet sorted out for me. She got the framework put in. She did all the calculations around the number of hours I would need individuals to do what we call compliance testing. She did all that for me. I got some new people in who understood where I was coming from. I had one individual who told me I didn't know what I was doing. That obviously that individual went, and then I had another individual who was just difficult. And I can honestly, my belief was they were being difficult because of who I was. And this was a male with a black female boss. He challenged me in every single way. But 18 months later, as I say, I came out the other end of it. What was interesting about putting that framework in place was when I then went to future EXCO meetings, my plan was accepted, and we got to a point where the business was saying to me, what about adding this piece in for compliance monitoring or compliance testing, because I need your support because internal audit are going to question me over it. So I went from a position of, as I say, from real challenge to acceptance, and then looking for my buy-in for some processes that they wanted to see themselves being implemented in their world.
Thank you so much for that response, Nicole. That really leads us on to the next topic, which is imposter syndrome. Initially, you talked about going into a meeting, with very senior level people and not necessarily fitting in. So the next question is basically one for Joe and Yinka. One challenge that many of us face relates to imposter syndrome. Studies have shown that imposter syndrome, or a feeling of believing that you're ill-equipped for a task, is highly prevalent among underrepresented racial groups in the workplace. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, how were you able to overcome it? So Joe, would you like to go first on this one?
Yes, I have experienced it, and I still experience it today. I think the the answer to that is being prepared and knowing yourself. So it's why are you feeling this way? So why are you having self-doubt? Why are you not having confidence in your competences and experience and skills like that? So part of the way that I deal with that is to have again, it's all in the conversation, first of all with myself. So why am I feeling like that, right? I wouldn't be invited to that meeting if people didn't think I had something to contribute. So it's kind of like trying to check your negativity and testing whether it's valid or not. So, to your example, where I go about being invited to a meeting, well, I wouldn't have been invited if I couldn't contribute. you know, in terms of nerves, then combat that by being prepared. So whatever it is that, you know, if it is a set piece that you have to present on, you know, rehearse, right? I think everybody, you know, knows about mentors and sponsors today. Use them and talk to them about, you know, how you're feeling and how to combat it. And if you don't have a mentor sponsor, you should get one. But also use your family and your friends and practice in front of them as well, and speak to people, because they might give you more ideas that you could contribute to the meeting. You know, you might have heard that saying, fake it till you make it. But I don't necessarily agree with that, because you're not faking anything, because you're there for a reason, right? I just think it comes down to being prepared, like I said before, but everybody you know, suffers you know, from imposter syndrome to some degree, and like you said, particularly women and underrepresented groups. But you know, also just visualize success, because again, if you read kind of like research and psychological research in particular, again, it's that positive mindset, you know, that athletes do. I am a winner, you know, I can do this, and just really psych yourself up. And again, there was that book written by Amy Cuddy, who used to do like the superwoman pose in the toilet before she went into a meeting, you know, standing up, I'm great, I can do this. All of that, it sounds silly, but actually that positive, you know, comments that you're saying to yourself does make a difference when you go into that meeting. So I would say preparedness, chat to people, and also try and negate your self-doubt as well, because you know, you wouldn't be there, otherwise you wouldn't be invited unless you had something to offer.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I love that Amy Cuddy book. She's got a TED Talk as well, where she talks about, you know, her whole like power pose, and, you know,
that's it. Let
yourself. Very important.
Yeah.
It
does work.
It definitely works. I agree.
It actually does.
You might feel silly, but it does work.
Yeah, it's one of the techniques coaches use as well, because I've been fortunate enough to have a coach, and I felt that I suffered from imposter syndrome, and she was great at getting me to stand up and to breathe deeply, to make sure I was prepared. But one thing she said to me, which I think is valuable: be prepared, but don't over prepare, because you do have a tendency, well, I certainly have a tendency to over prepare. So
and be yourself.
And be yourself.
That's what my manager's always telling me. Just be, you know, be yourself, and bring that authenticity to the table.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll just add, I mean, I think Joe, you captured it exactly. The key thing there is, remember, you're not alone. You're not alone. You know, it's something that people are challenged with every day. And I think Joe hit the nail on the head, you know. Be prepared. The other thing I'll just say, you know, to amplify what you said about relationships and leaning on your mentors, you know, because it's a very, I was thinking about it, you know, it's a feeling of being disconnected and unmoored. Like, am I the only one, you know, here who, you know, you kind of feel again like you're the only one, right?
Yeah.
And having those people in your relationship network that you can check in with, right? Because I know I've done the work. I know I was up till 1 a.m. yesterday reading every single, you know, document and preparing myself, right? Can I just practice with you? You know, those little steps, and really leaning on those people who are really there to support you, and knowing that, you know, again, this is not something weird about you. A lot of people go through this, and we all work through it, you know, with guidance like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Great response. Thank you, Yinka. So let's switch gears and touch on a topic that's very relevant when it comes to career advancement. At BNY Mellon, we truly believe in the importance of mentorship and sponsorship in professional development and career development. In fact, we offer various mentorship and sponsorship programs through our EBRGs and lines of business. Can you touch on how mentorship and sponsorship have played an important role in your career journey? Yinka, do you mind taking that question?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've touched on this quite a bit here, but absolutely. You know, we have various programs here at BNY Mellon. This is incredibly important, but, you know, it's everything from, when you talk about mentoring, people think about the traditional mentoring program where you have a senior person mentor someone who's perhaps less experienced. We also have reverse mentoring. You know, you might have someone more junior, because it's about a different lens and a different set of skills that someone can help you acquire. There's peer-to-peer mentoring. And then there's sponsorship, right? And so there's a big distinction, and people might have heard this. A mentor is someone who can work with you to enhance and develop your skills in various areas, like the example of, hey, let me practice with you. Hey, I think I'm really good at this, but I need some support, some reassurance, right?
Yeah.
A sponsor is different, very, very different. I think Joe had used the word influencer earlier, right? These are senior people who are influential in the organization, who can make a significant change in your career, who can place a bet on you and say, this is someone that will excel in this organization. They talk about the fact that a mentor is someone who talks to you and with you and develops you. A sponsor is someone who talks about you and puts their credibility behind you when you are not even in the room. So when we talk about those promotion conversations you heard about earlier, a lot of those conversations are happening when we're not there. And it's our sponsors who are standing up and stepping up us and say, I think this person is ready. Let's move this person ahead. So for me, okay, so that's the whole thing about the difference. I just wanted to highlight that. For me, at BNY Mellon, I've had a wonderful opportunity to participate in both mentoring programs and our Sponsor Ready program, which I participated in last year, and have a terrific sponsor. I've been a mentor and mentor others, but really having that exposure, the Sponsor Ready program, I'm going to plug that program. It really allowed me to think about my place in the organization through the lens of someone much more senior, and how I was helping drive the overall agenda, what I was representing, how I was showing up every day in the organization. It wasn't that I didn't know this before to some extent, but it just amplified that focus in my mind. And so I think that I will just, very, very much recommend it. And what I will say to everyone is, I encourage you, you've heard about it several times in this conversation, seek out these relationships. And, don't confuse mentoring and sponsorship. They're very different, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that you are investing in both critical development opportunities as you navigate your career and to get to the next level. So
That's great.
That helps.
That's very useful. Yeah, I'm glad, you differentiated between like sponsorship and mentorship. They're very two different things. Just before we move on, I just want to encourage our participants to, drop questions in the group chat. We're happy to answer them. There are a couple of questions that I've come through. Let's just throw one in there. How would you handle a hostile boss as a result of misaligned values? That's an interesting question. Who wants to go with that one? Shakira, is that one you'd be interested in answering?
A hostile boss. I have personally have not had a hostile boss, but I've had a hostile, maybe indirect boss. Okay. So, maybe a matrix report. So several years ago, and I was thinking about the challenging, overcoming career challenges question that you had asked to Nicole. So about, I think it was 2012, 2013, 2012, I come back from maternity leave and had been working for the individual that I had worked for at a previous organization that, was always kind of, my sponsor back in my previous company and here, and I was working for him. And then when I came back, I was working on a special project, right? That special project led into a whole nother role that was very eye-opening for me. And it gave me a different seat at the table as far as seeing how senior management can interact when they're all faced with a challenge or a goal that they may not all agree to, but it's been directed to them and given to them. So one of the managers at the time, it was a peer to my manager, my new manager, and they didn't see eye to eye on anything. So that meant whenever I had to present, right, I'm presenting our view, they didn't see eye to eye. I couldn't get 3 words into a presentation before it was stopped, right? And what that basically taught me is, okay, how do I work through not winning the person over, because that person had such a disposition that they weren't going to be won over. They didn't care what you had to say. It was, alliances were joined. People had their sides. They took their side, and it was just always very hostile, very uncomfortable. We had these twice weekly steering committee meetings, and I dreaded it. I mean, I could not sleep the night before, and I had to present every meeting, and every meeting there was a deck that was due. And I knew I'm doing this deck for no other reason, because you know what? I'm not going to get past page 1. If I'm lucky, bullet 1, right? And what I found was helpful was kind of understanding, trying to, research beforehand. Well, what are they going to come at me with? So I had the questions, the answers ready to the questions and the challenges that I was going to receive. I wanted to know more about that person and why were they opposed, right? I knew it wasn't me, right? I knew it wasn't necessarily something that I was doing, but they were just on a very different path, had very different views on how we were going to approach this transformation that we were all aligned to support. And what I started doing was working with their peers to understand more, help me be more successful in this meeting, right? And I didn't go to my boss, because I recognized that my boss and this person didn't get along, right? So I didn't want to hear his view. I wanted to hear others' views and have others try to coach me to how to work within, with this other manager that had to give feedback about my performance, right? And, what I learned there was sometimes you have to read the room. You have to understand more broadly. It's not just sometimes the task at hand, it's also the people and what biases they may be coming to the table with, whatever work effort it might, you might have to have. And once I kind of better understood, and I also understood who, quite frankly, of their peers, who was on what side, right? What were the questions I needed to answer? What did I need to know about all the different players? That helped improve the situation. And then, at some point, probably 9 months in, we did have some more one-on-one time of the getting to know you, right? And that also helped a bit. Still, by the time this person retired a couple of years later, still didn't see eye to eye, but at least it helped me better get through that time and better manage and work within that relationship. So I wasn't dreading, quite frankly, going to work.
Yeah. That's a very good response. I mean, being prepared, being proactive and strategic and reading the room and also having a coach to help you through that. Those are all very, very, very good points. Thank you for sharing those. Let's move on to another question. To switch perspectives here a little, as a highly skilled and experienced professional within the financial services industry, what are key pieces of advice that you've given to your mentees, proteges, or even colleagues? Nicole, do you want to share some advice that you've shared?
Sure. Some of these have been touched on already, but the key thing is to be yourself, to know your stuff, to be mindful how you challenge. So, we've all been in meetings where we know as soon as someone opens their mouth, and Shakira's experience is obviously, they're going to be challenging. They're going to hog the room and everything else is going to go downhill. So, I've said to people in the past, when you've got individuals that are challenging like that, let them speak, let them burn themselves out, and then you can say what you've got to say. And I found that out the hard way, I suppose, because the previous organisation I worked in, I had an individual who every time I went in with a compliance issue would spend 10 minutes ranting about compliance and the fact that they're a business disruptor and a pure cost centre, et cetera, et cetera. And one day I just sat there and thought, oh, here we go again. And after 5 or 6 minutes, the individual said to me, oh, okay then, so what was it you wanted? I thought, finally. I found the solution. So that is advice that I do give to people as well. I think if you're challenged and that challenge is unfair, go away and reflect on it and then have the conversation with the individual, find out what it was that triggered their challenge against you. Because the next time around, they'll think twice as to how they challenge you in a meeting, I believe. The other things are exams. If there's a role that you want to go for that requires a qualification, do it early on in your career. Because as you build up, you find there's less and less time to spend and devote on exams, etc. And then really the other thing is to network, and network with your boss's boss, network outside of your business line as well. Yeah, I think all of that helps, and network internally and externally.
Okay.
Yeah, that's advice, some of the advice that I've given.
That's very valuable advice. Thank you. That's actually leading us to a question that's been asked in the group chat, which is around how to get a sponsor in the organization or outside the organization if there isn't already a sponsor-ready program within your company. So it's quite hard to, network if you don't have access to certain people already in the first place. Joe, do you want to touch on that, perhaps?
It's a great question, because sometimes you might have a sponsor and you don't even know it, right? Because they're talking about you. But if you want one, so if you have a mentor, I'd maybe ask your mentor to broker an introduction to somebody, whoever, identify a sponsor first. So who do you want to be your sponsor within your organization? If you have a mentor, ask them to facilitate an introduction to that person, or be courageous and be bold, right? And email that person who you want to be a sponsor, and obviously do a little bit of research and try and find some common ground. But it's people love to feel useful, right? And if you ask people for help, it's highly unlikely that they're going to say no. They might say, sorry, I'm really jammed this month, but let's connect next month. Right, at least you've done it. So it's either the courageous approach and email someone directly, or pick up the phone and ask to have a chat and build that relationship there, or get somebody else in your network who might know that individual really well to facilitate an introduction for you. But whoever asked that question, you might already have a sponsor and you might not know it.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you for that. There's been another question that's come in, which is quite interesting. And it's basically one around what to do when actively seeking a promotion. So the question is, what has worked best for you when you actively seek a promotion? Perhaps is it going to your sponsors? Is it sort of going to your boss directly? Or what has worked best for you? This is an open question to anyone who wants to take it.
I would say have the conversation with your manager.
Yeah.
Right. If you actively want the next step, I think you say to them, you've been in your role X years, you're knocking it out the park, whatever. Here's where I want to go. What do I need to do to get to get that position, or to get that promotion? So it could be a promotion. I don't know, how people's companies work, but it could be an expansion of your current role. You might just pick up another geography. So I would always, start with the manager and find out about the promotion process. So hopefully, BNY Mellon is transparent, right, on its promotion process. It's up there on the intranet for people to see. So it's clear for people in terms of expectations around promotion, and the criteria is there. If it isn't in the company that you work for, then again, speak with your manager and get that advice. What do I need to do? What's missing in my school, in my my toolkit, and then go off and get that development. But at least your manager knows, that you're wanting to progress, and that seed has been planted. And if they're a blocker, then other ways, speak to other people.
Yeah, definitely.
To get that known.
Indeed. Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything there? Nope.
I think that was spot on.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Let's move on. So now each member of our panel actively supports and advocates for BNY Mellon's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy and initiatives through our involvement and leadership and our EBRGs. Can you talk about your involvement in these groups and what inspired you to become actively involved and advocate for change in the DEI space? Yinka, do you want to touch on that, please?
Absolutely. So I'm honored. I'm currently global co-chair for HEART, which is BNY Mellon's diverse employee network. And I'll just read quickly. HEART's mission is to raise awareness and leverage the talent of employees with diverse abilities to help build an inclusive and accessible environment at BNY Mellon. So this is something that is very personal to me. I mean, it wouldn't even be, beyond personal experience, it's just such an inclusive goal and such a part of our culture that just really fits with the overall company. For me, I've had a serious illness, and that experience really, you know how you think you know, how they say you don't know until you know, but you're like, wow, really? That just really heightened my awareness around the importance of creating a culture where people feel safe. Because when you're going through something serious in your life, it's a very insecure period, right? So really, I was in that experience, and thankfully I'm well now. But I came out of that with a commitment to lean in, to make sure that I was helping the company. I was being a culture carrier. We all have the opportunity to define the environment that we want, whether it's at BNY Mellon, whether it's within your community, whichever company you're at, right? And so for me, that really resonated, and when you think about it, there's a statistic that says there are over 1 billion people in the world with disabilities around the world. So many of us either care for someone or ourselves going through some kind of life experience. Think about it, your life, you've got a lot of runway in your life, and you're going to go through a lot of different experiences. And so the importance of having an environment that is supportive and is visibly supportive, no matter what your life experience is something that really resonates to me here at BNY Mellon. And that has really driven my involvement and advocacy around the E&I, and of course my global chair role with Heart. So long answer, but that's my story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. No, great story. I love it. Thank you. Here's a question.
So I have worked for a company that to me didn't have an inclusive environment. And I was in my 20s when I had my first role. I know it's just yesterday, Boyega. So when I had my first role, to me it was a very non-inclusive environment, right? So first day on the job, my manager sent me down to meet the CEO of a particular business line, and I walked in and I was like, hi, I'm Joe Symes, and I've arrived, come down to meet you. And the words out of his mouth was, "Oh, you don't sound how you look."
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Now, obviously, if that was said to me, now, I'd have a few choice words, but obviously, first role in your 20s, not really what you wanted to hear. So I did persevere, thinking, I can change that culture. And I think I stayed with that company, much to my detriment, for about 5 years. And that's what I love about BNY Mellon, because when I walked into the reception, and I remember it like it was yesterday, walked into the reception for my interview, I could see people smiling at each other, right, as they passed each other in the corridor. The receptionist was like, friendly, smiling, chatty. And I just thought, what, I want to work for this company. And I just saw people of all different, shapes, sizes, ethnicities, just like the whole shebang. And I thought, do you know what? I just need to nail this interview and I need to get this job. I just got such a good feeling about it. And that's why, I did help to kind of like launch the impact chapter in the UK. So part of that, I think I made a pledge to myself at that time when I was in my 20s that, I would give back, and I would make sure that I could, make some impact and some contribution to making, work cultures and environments, a good place to be, just from the seat, whichever seat I was in. So that's why I've always had, an interest, and obviously, kind of like from a moral perspective, just the equity side of things as well. But yeah, I helped in the impact. And then when I worked in Hong Kong, I also picked up the mantle to lead Heart as well, Yinka, when I was out in Asia. So trying to get that kind of like chapter off the ground and just get more governance around the network when I was out in APAC.
Okay.
If I can add one small comment, I think, what's very important is representation matters, right? When you walk into a room or walk into a space and you see others that are happy, that seem to be engaged, that look like you see people around the table, or you go to a meeting and you see people that value everyone's ideas and perspectives, it leaves you with a good feeling, right? You want to be there, right? So, getting, diverse talent in the door is only, the first step in making sure we have a very, inclusive culture, a diverse and inclusive culture, but we need to also, value everyone's input too. Because sometimes I feel like, there was a point in time in previous company that, yeah, they wanted you there, but nobody wanted to hear you, right? You just need to be there, right? So when you feel that your voice is actually being respected and listened to, and, the advice that you're given is actually coming to fruition. One small story, or just even point that I'll make, is I remember having a time where, there was someone particular in this business, in this company, that didn't listen to me, right? They did not want to take that advice. But sure enough, exactly what I said was going to happen did happen. And I just sat there like,
Told you so.
and then, and I was like, you could have been prepared for that. Would you like me to answer that question? Right. And that's how I had to handle it. Right. But it was like, they didn't want to hear another perspective and another idea because it wasn't there. So it makes a huge difference to value diversity of thought, of experience, and just different people, and where, no matter what, where you come from, or, what disability you may have, right? Everyone is important and everyone should be valued.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you for that. I'm conscious of the time. I just want to jump into this question because it's quite important. So looking back to when you first started out in your career, is there anything you wish you'd known, or a piece of advice you would give to your younger self? Shakir, do you want to continue on that? And then we'll hand over to Nicole as well to answer.
Sure. I'll be brief. I mean, just really to believe in yourself and always have a plan. You have to put yourself first, right? What is it that you want to do? You have to believe in you, believe in your abilities. And if there's something that you think you need to improve upon, go after it, seek it, build that plan, and, surround yourself by others that are going to help you get there.
Yeah. Nicole, do you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a couple of things very briefly. You have the right to be in the room. You belong in the room. That's the advice I'd give myself. The other thing is networking is important. And I think for a lot of us, we don't realise the value of networking until we're 4 years, 5 years into our careers. Just a bit of a story. I've got a friend who is a trader. And he said to me, we were talking about networking with our daughters, and he said, oh yeah, I knew all about that. Different background to me. I knew all about that. He said, as soon as I went into the organisation that he works at, he said, I learned how to play golf, even though I can't stand golf. And because he learned how to play golf, he was exposed to certain individuals, and that helped his career. So networking is important. And sometimes you have to do things perhaps in that networking environment that you wouldn't necessarily do outside, like learn how to play golf, for example.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's a great answer. And that actually brings us up to 6:30. So those were all questions we have time for. I have to admit, I thoroughly enjoyed this session. I really found it very insightful and fun as well. As always, these events are useful, but applying what we've learned here is also equally important. And I want to wish our participants all the best of luck on that journey as well. I'm going to hand over back to Ramona now.
Thank you so much. And big thank you to all of you for joining us.